Hello and welcome to DSA Presents. I'm Deirdre Silverman and my guests today are Patricia Rodriguez, who's a DSA member and teaches politics at Ithaca College, and Theophilus Alexander, a politics student at Ithaca College. Both of them attended the convergence at the U.S.-Mexican border in Nogales, Arizona, Nogales, Sonora, in early October. And we're here to talk about the meaning of that gathering of activists and the implications for our country. So why don't you begin by talking about what the convergence was and why it happened?
Okay. Thanks for having us, first of all. And so the convergence happened for the first time this year. There has been a mobilization of vigil that has happened at the gates of Fort Benning in Georgia, because that's where the headquarters of the School of the Americas is. And there's been for years and years this vigil to try to call attention to the fact that that this school exists and it trains Latin American officers, officials, police and military in counterintelligence and counter narcotics and all kinds of counterintelligence in essence, right? And so it has. There was a decision made by SOA Watch organizers to this year bring it to the border, right, in Nogales, and the purpose was to call attention to the roots of why migration is happening, and a lot of what is at the root of it is U.S. policy towards the region. And so that was the essence of why this convergence happened. And there was a lot of organizing that occurred behind the scenes to make this convergence happen, which was really neat to see that there's so much in terms of efforts of solidarity with migrant populations that are suffering a lot of discrimination, a lot of problems, a lot of violence in the process of migrating, but also in the process of like having to decide to come, right, to migrate for political reasons and for economic reasons.
So what actually happened at the convergence, Theo?
So our group comprised of Professor Patricia Rodriguez, myself, 3 other students, and another professor. We went to the border. It was a surreal experience. There were people of all different ethnic backgrounds and races, and we converged, we sang, we protested, we spoke, we cried, we danced, we cheered, and it was just it was just so much support and solidarity there, all in effort to combat human rights violations, immigration rights, detention, mass incarceration of immigrants, all these issues that have essentially built up to structures of inequality in the United States.
And why did each of you choose to go?
So I reached out to Professor Rodriguez last semester, and I wanted to do some Latin American work. I wanted to study Latin American history, culture, and she emailed back to me and said, "Hey, I'm doing this project. It's SOA Watch." So I looked up, School of the Americas, saw what their agenda was, what they were about, and it really interested me. I come from a town where we have a large migrant population, and never before did I ever realize how big of an impact that was on the community. And I have a friend that was personally deported, and that really has resonated with me since, because he was my best friend in high school. So seeing my community change over the course of I'm 20 years old, 20 years, having my friend deported and being offered the opportunity to do things that that would lead to immigration reform. That's really where my my personal background came from.
And for me, I had been to seven, like probably 6 or 7 times to the vigil in Fort Benning, and I thought that it was really important, a moment, because it was the first time going to the border, but also because of the moment, right, that we're in this electoral process that has brought so much up about the way that that migration is understood in this country, and the problems of like understanding it in such a closed-minded kind of way. And so I wanted to go because of that, but also because I think that it's important to give continuity to our presence there. And I had gone before to the SOA Watch in Fort Benning with Colombian social movement leaders. So we wanted also to continue that awareness, bringing that awareness about what's going on in Colombia, how it's connected to what U.S. policy is in Central America and in Mexico, and to tie the issues together.
So, for those who don't know, Nogales is right on the border. There's Nogales, Arizona, and Nogales, Sonora, Mexican state. Nogales, Sonora is about 10 times the size of Nogales, Arizona. And the border used to be pretty open. And now it's really closed. There's a big part of the wall there. Were people from Nogales, Sonora able to or from Mexico in general, able to participate in the convergence?
Yes, so we had workshops and we had sort of stages on both sides of the border, like with the wall in the middle. So that was sort of like good, and at the same time very hard to see that a wall separates, us.
Yeah.
And you were kind of talking about how like it was a piece of land, a piece of grass.
I
right?
was walking along the border, which is this probably 20-foot structure that it's all rusty and brown. And I was looking at the grass on the other side, on the Mexican side, and I was looking at the grass on the United States side. And I was looking at, and they're the same patches of grass. But what separates those two grasses from being together is just a 20-foot wall. And then I looked at, later we went to a vigil and I saw a group of kids on the other side, and they were playing soccer, and they were screaming, Mexico, Viva Mexico, Viva Mexico. And I looked at them and I was like, I can't go embrace them because of this wall.
Yeah.
It's a wall. It's just a wall that separates us too, and we're the same people. We have very, we're humans, but we're separated by a wall, and that was like the thing that really struck me the most about the entire trip.
Yeah. So what was also in response to continuing to respond to your question, they in sort of like doing workshops on both sides of the border. I think that those that could not cross from Mexico to the United States were able to be there and discuss and bring attention to their points of view and their work, as well as people in the United States. And there was a back and forth going on a lot. I think I crossed probably about 4 or 5 times. Yeah. So yeah, it was a interesting way in which they did this work. Of like just kind of like tying issues, and also there were many people from not just Nogales, Sonora, but from the rest of Mexico that came up to this convergence, and so it was a way to show that also the work of helping migrants in their process, because there's so many obstacles that they face, isn't just happening when you reach the border, but it's happening in the process of coming up, right? And so it was really neat. Like we actually went with a Professor Wishna she's in the photography program. And so it was a project related to the activism of women around issues in the border. And so it was really neat to hear several of the women who are activists and who do different aspects of the work of human rights and migration, right, and migration issues. So, for instance, we interviewed a woman who has been for years and years fighting corruption and narco trafficking in Guerrero, Mexico. And she had been arrested, and she had been sort of like really persecuted, and was lucky not to be killed, right, for doing this. But she was at the border to bring attention to issues in Guerrero, but also in lots of different parts of Mexico. And so she really kind of was adamant about continuing to build on solidarity links with all these organizations and all these people that were at the convergence. So that was really neat to see. And then we met so many women that were, and men too, and kids that were just kind of I think that we got a really important look at the issue of migration, and there's so much more to analyze.